Hi, today we're meeting with Les Zellan, chairman of Cooke Optics. I'm Joshua Strickland with Wide Camera, and Les is in town to do an interview with us and also to do a workshop. And we're just going to talk a few minutes, find out a little bit more about Cooke Optics and what
Great.
they do.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome.
It's I don't get here often, so it's really nice to have some friends here.
Cool. Yeah. Well, Hawaii is a very welcoming place, and we're glad to have you.
Good.
We have a lot of attendees that are coming in tonight. But tell us a little bit about what your role is at Cooke Optics and what you've been able to do since your time there.
Right. Well, I've been involved with Cooke really since the early 80s. But in 1998, I purchased it and obviously took over a much bigger role. And my main job is to travel around talking to people like yourselves and the Ottos and the Denny's of the world and try to figure out what's coming next so that when they're ready for whatever's next, we have it.
And can you talk a little bit about what is coming next?
No, I'd have to kill you.
Okay. Well,
But I can tell you what we've just introduced is the Cooke Anamorphic set, which we are now in the process of completing. When it's done, it'll be 10 lenses, 10 prime lenses and 2 zooms, and it should be complete. The prime should be complete early next year, and then the one zoom in April, and another one near the end of the year. And that came about really because of the digital revolution. You know, people have asked us to build anamorphic lenses since I took over the company, but in the film world, the market was just pitifully small. I never really counted them, but I would guess that between us and Arri and Ingenue and Zeiss, and you can fill in the blank there, we really only had 200 or 300 customers worldwide. Again, mainly rental houses. Yes, we all sold to individuals and assistants, excuse me, and occasionally a school, but our main focus, pardon that, was the rental houses. You guys were our main customers. And it was a really closed little club in the film world. It was actually quite nice. Everybody knew each other. We would bump into each other going in and out of various rental companies. But everybody knew each other. We all got along well. And because it was such a small industry, it became self-policing. And that is, it was hard to be an asshole because everybody would know.
Right.
So then Jim came out with the red camera and everything changed overnight. You know, the market that was 200 or 300 customers suddenly went to tens of thousands of customers. So because in the film world, anamorphic was difficult, expensive, it became the playground of the big features. And yes, with Hawk lenses, some people were doing little independent stuff and small stuff. But for the most part, the Panavision owned the anamorphic world. And whenever I sat down with rental people, it said, "Les, why don't you do anamorphic lenses?" And I'd go through the numbers with them, and I'd explain what it was going to cost them in the film world to play in the anamorphic world. And if you're going to play there, to play in the big boy area where Panavision is, you can't do that with one set of lenses or one camera. You need multiple of everything. And by the time we finished adding up what it was going to cost just for the cost of entry, they pretty much left the table. But then digital comes out. So all of a sudden, a couple of things happen. A is the market is now much, much bigger. The ability to do anamorphic is now at a flip of a switch. It's much easier. And more importantly, and don't take this the wrong way, because I know you don't rent film cameras, you're into digital. Digital is a boring format. In the film world, there were a dozen film stocks, and there were not an infinite number, but every lab had their own processing tricks. So, between film stocks and maybe flashing and all the kinds of things that a director of photography could do, he had, thousands of different looks he could obtain. And now what has he got? He's got a chip from Arri, a chip from Sony, a chip from Canon, and a chip from Red. So that's, and because digital by its very nature is static and sterile. It's not it really is a pretty uninteresting format. So what do people do? They use old speed panchros. They want old lenses. They put 150 filters on the lens. They do all kinds of things to try to make it not look like it was digital, and they're pretty successful at it. And one of those things that you can do to make digital look more interesting is anamorphic. It adds I should trademark the term, but anamorphic funkiness is a look. It adds interest, and it's really it's different. It makes it more visually appealing. And I think, frankly, that's all those factors, the digital cameras, the anamorphic being easier, and now the new anamorphic lenses coming out, not only from us, but there are several other manufacturers that have been noted the same thing, are addressing this and giving cinematographers new options.
Yeah, and it's a powerful thing to think about, all the new tools that filmmakers have with the advent of and huge growth of digital cameras.
Yeah, well, nothing comes for free, and as I said, even though they've got tons of new tools, they lost a lot of really interesting, creative things that they could do in film. If you shoot a white wall, you do a static shot of a white wall, and you shoot it in film, even though there's nothing going on, there's something there that'll keep your eye dancing around. I mean, will it hold your interest for hours? No. Well, maybe yours. But,
yeah.
But but if I do that same shot in digital, there's absolutely nothing happening. So just the dynamic of the way film was constructed made it a more interesting medium.
Right.
And then you add in all the options that the cinematographer could do in the camera, or pre-flashing, and all the things they could do at the lab. He could come up with a real look, which is hard to do and much harder to do in digital.
Has the digital, I guess, revolution changed the way that Cooke designs lenses? And how so?
Yes and no, and actually mainly no. The Cooke look, which is real, and it's a recipe and it's our underlying philosophy of the lenses we build, and we've had that since really the 20s when we came up with the speed panchros. Our little secret is that we design our lenses for the audience of the lens. Now, you may think, what do you think the audience of the lens is?
The audience is the people watching the movie.
No, that's the ultimate audience.
Okay.
But the audience for the lens is the film stock or the sensor.
I see.
I mean, that's who the lens is talking to. So, when we designed the speed panchros back in the 20s, when sound movies came in, we designed, the reason they're called panchros is panachromatic film, black and white film. So we designed the frequency response of the lenses to match the frequency response of the film. Now, the way your eye sees and the colors that it sees better or worse are different than the colors the film sees. It's not a direct match. The film sees far deeper into the blue than your eye does. So Cooke lenses are actually designed far deeper into the blue than your eye can see, because that's where the film is. And that's part of what gives the Cooke look. There are other things, there are bunches of other things, and if I told you all of them once again, well, you'd all have to die, So.
It's a very secret recipe. It sounds like there might be 12 herbs and spices in
Yeah,
this thing.
well, it's like the recipe for Coke. Now, Coca-Cola, that is.
Yeah.
But our look has been very consistent, and fortunately for us, color film sees deeper into the blue than black and white did. So our recipe stayed steady with the advent of color film. And then and this is probably the luckiest one of all, is that chips actually see deeper into the blue than the film did. So our basic recipe that gives us the Cooke look has stayed consistent. Are there some things we may do in the lens? You know, there was a big argument or a big discussion when digital cameras came out about lenses needing to be telecentric so that you wouldn't get, you know, interference. You know, the light hitting all the pixels would be at the same angle, and a lot of these arguments are technically correct, but are what I would term red herrings. You know, our lenses, the S4s are not telecentric. They were never designed to be because it's not really important on film. And what was the cinematographers picked to do all the testing on for the Alexa and before that the D20 and the 21? They were using our lenses, and you know, so while it's a technical argument that may have some, sort of like arguing how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, you know. Yeah, there's a technical argument there, but does it actually translate into reality? And the answer is no. So, and there are other sort of red herring things that are out there. And if you think about, you know, and now we're in the game of resolution, 2K, 4K, 8K, you know, gazillions of Ks. Ultimate resolution does not necessarily make a picture anybody wants to watch. And the best example of that is now in the age of 4K, the most popular camera out there is still the Alexa, which is basically an HD camera on steroids. Right. So you know, and what Arri got right, or better than the other guys, is their color imagery, their texturing of the scene. You know, they've got a very cinematic look, where the other guys tend to have a very video-ish look. Right. You know, people obviously, you look at all the big films are usually shot on Alexa, not on the 4K stuff or this other stuff. So that should tell people, especially like Netflix, who's, you know, saying everything has to be in 4K. Right. Once again, you know, if people don't like looking at the image, it doesn't matter how many K it is. And if people really are absorbed by the story and the image, once again, it doesn't matter how many K it is.
It's incredible. Yeah. And you can see that. I mean, when we first got our first Alexa camera, and you put that image on the screen, you could feel it. Yeah. And it feels good.
But
it puts something in you.
That's Arri, you know, I really do believe Arri had a near-death experience. And it's amazing what that can do to people. You know, when Red came out, the year before Red came out, I believe Arri sold more film cameras than they ever sold before. And then Red came out and they just hit a wall. Luckily for them, I guess the Epic didn't come out quite on time. It was about a year late, and that gave them a big space to get the Alexa in. And frankly, they did everything right on the Alexa. It fits on your shoulder. Why the other guys don't make a camera that fits on your shoulder is still beyond me. Why you have to put all this stuff on it to put it on your shoulder. That's I don't make cameras, so I don't, you know, it's not my department.
Maybe you should.
Trust me, no. I have enough problem making lenses. But Arri just really used all their film experience and gave cinematographers a camera they wanted to use. And both ergonomically, menu structure-wise, and image-wise. At the end of the day, if they don't like the image, they're not. All that other stuff is going to go by the wayside if it doesn't make an image they like.
Right, exactly. Choose another tool.
Yeah.
Tell us. To our left, we have the Cooke Mini S4 lenses.
These are the Mini series, of which there are now 10 in the series, from 18 up through 135. These are great little lenses. These are not to be confused with lenses that are repackaged still lenses. These lenses were designed by the same people that did the 4s, the 5s, and the anamorphics. They're built in England, like all of our lenses are, and they're real motion picture lenses. They shot Hugo using two sets of 5s, 2 sets of 4s, and 2 sets of Minis. And frankly, if you're shooting at 2.8 or slower, and the only difference between the sets was really the speed. The 5s being 1.4, the 4s being 2, and the minis being 2.8. You know, when we originally introduced the minis, I take full responsibility for making a terrible marketing mistake. These were originally called Pancros, and because I loved our history, and the speed Pancros, frankly, are still in demand today. People are still making movies with lenses we made 60, 70, 80, almost 100 years ago. You know, we've been around a long time, and the glass is still being used. I think that's pretty. Somebody used the word awesome today. I don't like using that word. It sounds so Valley Girl, but anyway.
It's probably me.
Anyway, so the only difference if you're shooting at 2.8 or slower, you shouldn't be able to tell whether you shot on a 4 or a 5 or a mini. And frankly, now with cameras being as fast as they are, it's a little disappointing to me. The minis have been very popular. We sell them as fast as we can make them, but it's disappointing they're not more popular. Especially, I would say most of these have gone to production companies and individuals. It's disappointing to me that they're not more popular in rental. Because, well, you know, I talk to a lot of DPs, and yes, sometimes they want to shoot a T2 to get a depth of field of a hair, or 1.4. I mean, let's be serious. Nobody can pull focus at 1.4.
Right. Nobody wants to.
Well, no, but I mean, on some lenses and focuses, the depth of field at 1.4 is 3/16 of an inch. So if you're trying to photograph somebody that's not dead, and they're breathing, you cannot hold focus on them.
No.
I mean, you just can't. I know there's some really good focus floors out there, and they do a really great job under incredibly difficult circumstances. But the reality is, something's got to give. You know.
Right.
So, and then when I talk to most people, they're saying, "Where do you usually shoot?" And it usually comes back at a 4, 5, 6 split. And so my next question then is, and you need a T1.4 lens, why? Well, there's always the case that, you know, it may get dark and we may need more speed. Okay, well, that can happen. But I've noticed the DPs that really do their homework, and they really plan out their shots. I've been on several movie sets or TV shows where they're using minis, and I go with relatively well-known big name DPs, and I go over to them and I say, you know, Mister, you're using minis. Why? And they said, well, you know, either in a studio or I'm outside during daylight, and I'm shooting everything at 2.8 or better, usually again at a 4, 5, 6 split in that area. And yeah, I could get 4s or I could get 5s, but it's a waste of money. I can use that my budget better elsewhere.
Exactly.
And you know, that's somebody that's done their homework. You know, or I know we were working with a gentleman shooting a British DP shooting in Austin, and he said, you know, for the 2 or 3 night scenes, I rent the lenses in for that, but for everything else, the minis are fine, and it gives him the Cooke look and the texture that, regardless of whether he's shooting a 4 or 5 or a mini. So he's getting it, and he's using his money more wisely. Because, you know, even the big DPs have a budget.
Right.
Yeah.
The money is not endless.
Yeah, well, too bad.
I noticed that all the Cooke lenses are made in PL mount. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. And is there any plans to release another mount system, or have you had any demand for that?
Yeah, with the new cameras, certainly there are people talking, you know, about all the various Canon and Sony and all these various mounts, and you know, once again, stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Yeah, that is one of the advantages I would say for a rental house is the compact primes.
Sure.
They have an interchangeable mount system, and we can buy 1 or 2 sets of lenses to serve many different customers. So that is a pretty nice feature. But so stay tuned for that. I read recently that Cooke has won an award for their lenses from I believe the Academy. Can you tell us a
Yeah,
little bit more about that?
that was quite fun. It was in 2000. The award was from the Academy. It was an Oscar statue in 2012 in the 2012 award cycle, which means that we got it in February of 2013,
Mm-hmm.
and it was great fun. It was basically it was a lifetime achievement award because we've been involved with film going back to the very beginning. You know, when before George Eastman started Kodak, he came over to England and met with the founder of my company to talk about building lenses. And in fact, we built lenses for Eastman up until the First World War. So, you know, we've been around a long time. And because we're in England and not in Hollywood, we don't get a lot of attention. And the Academy was very gracious, and you know, on the technical level, you apply for awards. They're not. You don't go to the. You know, when you watch the Academy Awards, they say 2 weeks ago at another location, and in about 8 seconds they run through all the technical awards.
Right.
And for the most part, everything up to an Oscar statue is something you apply for. You know, you say, I did this great thing and it's really wonderful, and then it goes through a whole very rigorous scientific sci-tech committee review, and they say, okay, you're worthy, and you get either a certificate to frame, or you get an Academy plaque that has a little Oscar in it, and it's about yay big. You very rarely get an Oscar, and you can't apply for an Oscar. And you can't apply for like a lifetime achievement award.
Sure.
But the Academy, you know, took a look of all the contributions that we made, you know, at just about every critical junction in the industry. It was Cooke. Believe it or not, they came up with a solution. When Technicolor developed the 3-strip process, nobody could figure out, you know, and if you know the 3-strip process?
Tell us a little bit
Okay,
about it.
well, it's essentially like a 3-chip TV camera, except that instead of chips, you had 3 black and white strips of film, and one going through a green filter, a red filter, and a blue filter, and then that would be dyed, and you know, that's how they got color film. The problem was nobody could figure out how to make a lens that had the long enough throw out of the back focus to go through a prism block into a splitter and to get to because now your image plane isn't, well, it's no longer 52 millimeters away, it's a long way away because you've got the beam splitter and the optical path to the 3 strips, etc. Nobody could figure that out. Technicolor, in fact, sent engineers over to England, met with Cooke, and we developed basically a whole new genre of lenses to solve that problem. That's an inverse telephoto lens, and it is now a staple for the whole industry. It's virtually everybody uses it, but that was something that work was pioneered at Cooke. When talking movies came in, now Cooke made our first motion picture lens in about 1900, but you know, up until talkies, you know, people would shoot with anything. Speed was not an issue. They used to light sets either with sunlight, or they'd use carbon arc lights. Now you probably are way too young to know what a carbon arc light is.
I know what it is.
Okay. Wow, you're older than you look.
But
But
good genes.
But you know, if you work with carbon arcs, they're noisy, they're dirty, they're smoky. I mean, modern ones I'm sure are better, but again, we're talking in, you know, 1910, 1920, so it's pretty primitive stuff. So sound comes in, and they have a problem. You can't use these noisy lights anymore, and you can imagine that the state of incandescent lighting in the early 20s was also primitive.
The speed was slow.
And speed was slow.
Yeah.
So they needed really faster lenses. And by coincidence, Cooke had just introduced what was called Series O. Cooke used to make everything. This was a still lens. and it was faster than their other lenses. But in the still world, the idea of spending, 15 or 20 more dollars or whatever, I have no idea what the price differential was, but a bit more for a bit faster lens when your 3.5 is doing just fine. Yeah, maybe I need, we're not usually photographing action here.
Right.
So, so I need another second of exposure, big deal.
Big deal.
So the lenses weren't selling. Sound comes in, and the guys at Cooke were pretty smart. They said, "Oh my God, we've got an f2 lens." Mm-hmm. So they went back to the drawing boards. They reformulated, and the Series O evolved very quickly into the Speed Pancros, and the rest is more or less history. We have letters in our files from studio heads saying that the Speed Pancros made their business possible. The first Academy Award-winning film, which was silent, it was called Wings, was shot on on our lenses. A name you may or may not be familiar with, the famous Players Mansky, which was one of the very early studios that I can't remember. They evolved into Paramount. I don't know what they evolved into, but they made tons and tons of films. They had 75 sets of Cooke lenses. So, I mean, we were, we played a major part in the evolution of the film industry. And anyway, it's a long-winded way of saying, the Academy recognized the contribution we have made not only in the prime lenses, but also in zooms. I know we're not now known for our zooms, but we pioneered the zoom development in both TV and in film. So, when they looked at the whole breadth of work that we contributed to the industry, they said, "Woo, you guys are overdue." And so we got an Oscar, and I got to accept it. That was quite fun. But the interesting thing is that was, I believe, Oscar number 48 or 47, handed out at the SciTech level. So that's like one every other year. They're pretty rare at the SciTech level. So we're really honored.
And where is the statue?
It's at the factory.
At the factory.
Yeah.
In the UK.
In the UK, yeah.
Wow, that's
But
incredible.
it wasn't for me. It was
Absolutely.
It was for the company.
And everybody that's worked there in the last 100+ years.
Yeah, since 1886.
1886.
Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Wow. Cooke, we're so happy. We just got our Cooke Minis maybe 2 months ago.
Great.
And I think there's a set of anamorphics that are in our future, according to you, because I can't say no to this guy.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well,
But and are you? Did we talk about the uncoated fronts for these?
we have not talked about Uncoated. We do actually own the set of Uncoated.
You should put them on.
Yeah. The look is incredible.
The look is incredible, and there are a lot of rental houses in LA that have the minis, and they just keep them permanently in the uncoated. It's easy. It's very simple to change the fronts coated to uncoated, but for the it gives it a look and might get people more interested in using them.
Yeah. We've thought about shooting some test footage so people can see the difference.
There's a bunch on the web. If you go to our Vimeo site,
Okay.
there's a bunch of footage up there. And Jeremy Benning in Toronto shot a fairly extensive test. The rental house in New York, TCS, also shot a pretty good test. But there's a lot of footage up there. You're certainly welcome to do your own.
Okay. I also heard that there are rear uncoated elements.
You can do both.
Okay.
The front element is easy to replace. It's relatively simple. The rear is a little bit more complicated. Most people only do the fronts, but you can do both.
Okay.
And doing the rear probably adds about 15% more. So the main effect is from the front element.
From the front element.
Yeah.
And it's just lots of flaring and veiling to the image.
When we came out with the S4s, everybody was complaining about all that flare and veiling and glare, and so everybody, if you go back and see what people said about the S4s when they came out, they said, "Oh, great, the great control of the flare," and the other big thing about the S4s when they came out is most lenses up until that time were optimized in design at a slower speed. I won't mention them, but the lenses that went to get to very fast were really designed at 2.8. And then, just keep opening the iris and you say, okay, I can't take it anymore. But the S4s were designed at T2. And so if you, again, going back to the comments that were made when they first came out in the late 90s was, I can shoot wide open. I don't have to worry anymore, because the old rule of thumb is you got to shoot 2 stops down.
Right.
And certainly there was probably some truth to that in older lenses, and probably including the Panchros. But people were pretty amazed when the S4s came out and they could shoot a T2 with confidence.
Yeah, and it's powerful. These lenses are great wide open.
Yeah,
and
they are.
Definitely shoot all day in them that way.
Yeah.
And with the eye data, you can see all the lens data inside the camera.
And we'll be coming out with the 3rd generation of eye at the beginning of the year. It is going to be retrofittable into all the eye lenses, and it's quite exciting. And we're going to add inertial data, distortion data, and illumination data. So everything that the VFX community has ever asked for is going to be in what we call i3.
i3. And is that technology that Cooke developed internally?
Yes.
Wow. So
and we've pretty much freely licensed it to all our competitors and the camera manufacturers. Because metadata is one of those things where it's sort of a chicken and the egg problem. When we started it 16 years ago, nobody even knew they wanted it. Now everybody understands they want it, and it's important. But I'm still not convinced anybody's actually used it in anger yet, because this lens has it, but this one doesn't, or and the camera manufacturers don't necessarily all collect the right data or the same data. I mean, we can hand the data off to them, but what they do to it,
right,
that's out of our control. So we continue to work with other lens manufacturers, as well as the camera guys, trying to come up with a standard. So I'm making progress. So who knows? Maybe soon people will actually say, "Wow." Well, the guys that will ultimately drive the data are going to be the effects guys.
Right.
If they say, "Boy, this iCube system, it's the cat's meow. I got to have this data. It'll make our life simpler. It'll save us money," then it'll happen. Because those are the guys that will drive it.
And I think VFX will become even more prominent in work over time.
Could it get more than it is now?
I think it'll be more obvious. I think it'll be something that will trickle down even to the everyday commercial work. It'll just be more accessible.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much there.
It is.
I think almost everything now is, it used to be rare. Now almost everything, whether it's in TV and in film, the effects are everywhere.
Well, Les, I really appreciate you coming
My
on
pleasure.
and talking to us.
Thanks.
And
thanks for the opportunity.
Without a doubt.